I enjoy the art of archiving anime as much as I enjoy anime itself. I have, by some people's metrics, a large collection of anime, and by others, incredibly small. But one of the things I enjoy the most about archiving anime is finding those weird old releases of a fan sub and archiving it and keeping the seeds available on any tracker I can find, because I think that even though they are possibly the most inferior version of the show available, they offer a bit of a deeper insight into what the heck was going on when this show was released. For instance, right here I have the IU fan sub release of Rosen Maiden, and these subs are burned in to the video stream, which we refer to as being hard subbed, meaning that since the subtitles are burned into the video when you increase the scale, the subtitles scale with the video, meaning on a 1080p monitor, this video file will look like garbage. Even more so with the crappy subtitles that didn't scale correctly. And right here, let's see, it's 768 by 432, which is almost 480p. But obviously, this might have been good back in the day when this was released. I don't know, more than 10 years ago, probably 15 years ago. But on a 1080p monitor in current year, it's not going to hold up as well. So the enter Hitsuji's version of Rosen Maiden, which from what I can tell uses the same script as IU with some very minor changes. But the difference here is that it has a DVD encode, like I said, and it has soft subs, which are subtitles included as an attachment, part of the MKV container, which is a separate stream from the video. They're separate. Oftentimes MKVs have separate video streams, audio streams, subtitles, and whatnot. So you can mux different things into it, meaning that if you have your different subtitles from a different group that you want to use with someone else's video, you can just throw them in onto the MKV easily. You could have multiple subtitles in multiple different languages, which allows easier for like dual audio releases for people who care about that. So when you scale the video up here, despite the video not looking the best, since even though it's at the proper resolution of 704 by 480, it's still a DVD rip, and it's still in standard def. But the subtitles scale separately from the video this time, so they look visibly sharper than how they would with the hard sub version. Yet I still have the hard sub version, and if pressed to watch the show, I might watch the fan sub with the inferior video and potentially inferior subtitles. Why is that? To understand a little bit, let's travel back a couple years. To the early 2000s, whenever this this site loads. This is anime fan subs from 2000 to 2010. This is a great blog. I enjoyed reading it a lot. It goes pretty in depth into the formative years of fan subbing. Hard subs emerged as a necessary evil thanks to VHS subtitling back in the day, because from what I can understand, VHS subtitles had to be burned in, since unlike the formats that would come later, like DVDs and Blu-rays and whatnot, VHS did not allow for different audio and subtitle tracks. So, like, these people had no choice but to burn them in. And I guess out of habit, when we started to see TV rips being distributed, like Love Hina here, the subtitles were also burned in. Likely also due to bandwidth problems, since back in in this time, this was still very much during the dial-up era. So a lot of people did not have access to fiber optic connection like how many people do these days. So downloading let's see how large this file size was, 81 megabytes. This was considered pretty good. This was standard back in 2000, and it was a 240p video. Hard sub out of necessity. I'm not familiar exactly with the software around this area, but I can almost guarantee that there wasn't any software available that would render soft subs separately. But it almost didn't matter, since most people's monitors back then, it didn't matter, because the video here would be almost, it would just look fine on their monitors back then. It's equivalent to like watching a 720p hard sub anime on your 1080p monitor. It's gonna look almost indistinguishable from like if it was soft subbed. There might be like minor differences, but it won't really matter too much. But you will be able to tell the differences at larger resolutions. But back then, this wasn't a problem. Also, like I said, software, but also probably hardware as well. But largely, it was likely due to bandwidth and the type of codecs they were working with, which was DivX-3 for Love Hina specifically. Fast forward a little bit, and we get to Canon 2002, which includes karaoke, which is still a staple of a lot of fan sub groups, and that's one of the reasons why I'm drawn to fan subs in the first place, is because they include translations of the songs. It's not that like retail subtitles can't do karaoke, like Crunchyroll, because they do on some shows. I know Mob Psycho 2, Mob Psycho 102, did have translations of the opening, which was interesting, but it usually has to do with rights and songs and corporate shit that I'm not gonna get too far into. But fan subs, since they're essentially releasing this stuff illegally, they can do whatever they want. So they translate the openings here, and they usually do some interesting stuff with here, and they have karaoke effects. Think about it what you will. I really like this stuff since I'm a huge fan of Annie song. So like being able to see the lyrics and read them, and then have like even if the karaoke is retarded, like the effects that they're using, it still is kind of cute that they were trying so hard in the first place. That sometimes you'll see some interesting stuff. Usually you just see the karaoke effect, like how you see in karaoke parlors in Japan, where the letters that are currently being voiced are like slowly filling in. But it's cool because like you can read the lyrics, and oftentimes the songs in these shows are not chosen like completely randomly. They're chosen for a reason, and a lot of times the lyrics have meaning that can be applied to the show or make you think of the show in a different light, which is cool. So Canon 2002, likely one of the very first shows to implement this type of karaoke business. Earlier shows did have karaoke, like as in translated opening and ending songs, but this show had karaoke effects. And from what I've noticed, a lot of shows, even after groups started to adopt MKV and soft subs, they continued to use hard subs for the opening, because I believe they would use separate software for that, like some Adobe software, to make it easier to render these karaoke effects, and sometimes it would be pretty crazy. But the reason I think hard subs specifically persisted is because of this phenomenon known as speed subbing. I mean. You started to see this a lot with Gundam Seed, which was the biggest show of its time. And even in current year, we see speed subbing except in the form of Crunchyroll, where people will sacrifice the quality of the translations for the sake of just watching it quicker. Because for the average person, they don't understand Japanese and they're watching anime. So the translations, if there's an incorrect translation, they won't really give a damn. Versus someone who has a deeper understanding of the knowledge or has actually studied the knowledge would be able to correct. Which turns to be very infuriating the more you see incorrect translations. And obviously you can argue that if you're able to understand the language, why not just watch the anime raw? The reason I still watch anime with subtitles mostly is because there's a lot of vocabulary that I just don't understand and I have never encountered. And like, I'm not about to sit down and watch a sci-fi show that uses more complex vocabulary than my like N3 on a good day level would give me. But even with that level, you will be able to tell certain problems that plague retail subtitles. One of the biggest issues I have personally is the lack of translation notes and over-localization. I also really like honorifics. A lot of people really hate that, but I enjoy having honorifics since I think it's an important cultural part of the language that shouldn't be localized as simply like Mr. or Miss, because that's not what it means. There's an argument for localization, but I don't really give a damn about it. But anyways, speed subbing. People want anime fast. If they're sitting on their hands waiting for whatever group to release the newest episode of Gundam Seed and they're taking way too long, it doesn't matter who releases it, they just want to see the show. So this enters speed subbing groups. This right here I believe is Anime Junkies. I mean, I haven't seen Gundam Seed. I haven't seen anything with Anime Junkies that they've released, so I'm gonna not talk like I understand what was going on here. And for that matter, I never lived through a lot of these early days of fansubbing. This knowledge was gained after the fact, since at this time, I wasn't on the internet, let alone watching anime, so take it with a grain of salt. But speed subbing emerged because people just wanted to see the show, which actually succeeded. This practice of speed subbing succeeded, much to the disdain of a lot of other groups who would take their time and add a lot of time and care into their translations, interpreting the language, not simply not transliterating, but actually translating, which are two different terms. I'm not going to get into the semantics of that right now, but the important thing to note is that this sort of normalization of speed subbing started and got that ball rolling on the death of fansubbing, which fansubbing these days in current year is not dead. There are still groups that do fansub, but it's completely different than was back then, which back then this was almost the only way to watch a lot of these shows, whereas now it's mostly about like release groups and using the official retail subs as a base script and then sort of reworking lines that you felt that were wrong and could have been done better. But speed subbing became a thing because people watched them, because people care about speed, like I said, and that still holds true to this day. So you see a lot of this. And the thing with the thing with hard subs is that they're hard to get out. Let's see, redone. Because they're embedded directly into the video. Right here I have the site open for Redone, which is a release group of this. I believe it's just one guy who does re-releases of old shows that usually only have an archaic fan sub version on a TV rip or something, and he will extract the hard subs through various methods, which he recounts here, and will slap them on to the best source available, or the source that best source he deems available, which is usually just a DVD. For example, this is the guy who did Iria no Sora UFO no Natsu. But right here in this sort of blog post, he recounts the various methods to extract hard subs from a video. Usually, he says the best way to do it is to get the scripts directly if the group still has it. Otherwise, you're going to be in for a world of pain, because you're going to have to use optical character recognition, OCR, is what it's abbreviated to and known as more commonly, which is like essentially taking screenshots with a program that recognizes that there are subtitles on the screen, and then trying to convert that into a more workable format, such as an ASS, which is Advanced Substation Alpha. Which this will give you a headache. I've never done it because it seems like such a pain in the ass. You can retype this. You can retype the subs yourself by hand, which is probably the worst option, but might end up being the best and most efficient if like you don't want to finagle with OCRing, or you can use like non-English scripts. But essentially, at the end of the day, extracting hard subs is a problem. And the reason I mention this is because back in the day, these fan sub groups who are speed subbing, I think, despite the fact that these groups were essentially illegally releasing anime, there was still a lot of drama within the community in these groups. Like, you had on one hand the speed subbers who didn't really give a damn about quality, and then you had the old fags like Line Evil. Line Evil still exists. They released like a movie of Slayers like not even a few months ago, so they're still kicking. They've been around for way too long, but these groups had a lot of pride to them, and you would see this because they would put their own names in the credits of the show, like in the opening credits, which I think is kind of it's definitely a relic from another time, but I think it's kind of cute. But anyways, the reason a lot of these groups, I believe, hard sub these was because they didn't want other groups obtaining their scripts. Because if you would use soft subs, anyone else can grab your scripts, slightly modify them, and release them as your own. As right here, I'm going to open up this site, Kitsuneko, which is just a huge database of subtitles. Like you can grab, like right here, Tiger and Bunny, for example. You see whose scripts are available, and you can just grab them and then slap them onto whatever RAWs that you have, whether that be like your own Blu-ray rips that you made, or RAWs that you obtain online through various methods. And I think a lot of these groups continued to hard sub for a long time, even if it wasn't the best method, simply because they didn't want to. They had a pride, and they didn't want anyone to steal it, even though people probably didn't really care about doing that because they were too busy doing their own thing. I was going to open up Sushi here to mention Sushi really quickly, which is a program used to retime subtitles when switching between sources, because oftentimes, the timing is slightly different between the TV release and the home video release for an anime. Usually it's marginal, but back in the day when it's fan subgroups, like if you OCR a script, you get the script, you're going to have a lot of spaces between like commercial breaks and where they cut them, potentially added scenes, and then everybody's favorite moment when they add the kono bangumi wa GORAN no sponsor no teikyu de, the sponsor message that a lot of groups kept in back in the day, which just takes like 10 seconds out and completely changes the timing for the scripts, but I digress. But the problem with hard subbing is that some shows, like Pani Pony Dash for example, largely only has a TV rip because of the nature of the show. If it was hard subbed, it would have been significantly easier. Or I mean, if it was soft sub, it would have been significantly easier to take the script out and then slap it onto the DVD and Blu-ray RAWs that now exist. But Penny Pony Dash in particular poses a major issue since it has a lot of animated SFX, like the little effects around the character that float around, not to mention the graffiti on the chalkboard and whatnot, that poses a terrible, terrible project that no one has undertaken yet, because like there's so much to translate with this. For example, like right here you see at the top the translation notes. So no one has undertaken this project, at least that I know of. And the problem is that this is a TV rip, and let's see right here, the resolution is 704 by 396. It's less than 480p. It scales poorly on a 1080p monitor, and it's not even the best source. It's not like I'm watching a hard sub DVD version here or anything, which poses a number of issues like to like watching it in the modern day. It's obviously not going to be the best, but being Penny Pony Dash, it has a lot of like translation notes and whatnot for the cultural references, and it's for that reason it's never had a new release, unfortunately. But that's kind of how things turn out when you use hard subs. So that's why a lot of people just continue to watch this show with GG's fan sub from like whenever the show came out, like 2005 maybe. I don't know when this came out, and it doesn't say in here. Oh, around 2004. At least that's when their codec, the codec they used was released. So it was around there. So this show is like it's like 16 years old at this point, and we're still watching the same files as they did back then, which is kind of why I enjoy watching these hard subs. I recently watched Full Moon o Sagashite, and while there is a better DVD encode out there, which I did watch, the official translations after episode 26 left a lot to be desired. So around that time, I started just watching AFK's release of it. And AFK's release has a lot of problems. It's a terrible video quality. It has everybody's favorite giant clock in the top left-hand corner of the screen. But there was a lot of personality to the translations, and they translated the songs, and they had karaoke effects, and it was really cool. But the thing is that AFK's fan sub release of this show, the torrent has been alive since 2003, at least on Baka BT, the private tracker, which archives a lot of old fan subs, which is cool if you're interested in that. But the torrent has been alive since 2003. That's older than a lot of people I know. And this is kind of one of the major reasons why I enjoy fan subs, is because while being like its own separate entity, I consider it to be an intrinsic part of enjoying anime. Finding the correct subtitles, finding the specific release and the best version of the release, at least what I deem to be the best, it overall enhances the show. And there's a lot of reasons why you could watch the retail version or whatever, or buy the Blu-ray. I have a Blu-ray collection as well, but I will always be continuing to return to the fan sub version of the show because they have a lot of personality to them. And appreciation of the hard subbed AVI, DivX, all that garbage with all those translation notes. I love that. And I hope that spirit of that fan sub, like someone appreciates that out there besides me. And I know those people out there exist. So it's just a matter of like making others understand. But that's basically my rant about that.